Tani here doing my review for the Mandalorian season 2 series or season 2 premiere. Sorry, super thrown off. So this is the first review that I've done, and this is also the first show that I watched after having a baby. So that's why it's a week late. I just watched the second episode, which was fantastic as well. But obviously, I like to do my things separately, so it's really weird being here. I'm also super tired already. Baby stuff. It's only been a week. It's been like a week and a day since having my baby. It's been super fun. There's her little director booster seat here. Her name's Ashley, of course. So it's been interesting. This is like my random free time because I'm at my place right now and I'm gathering up a couple extra things and like doing laundries, and then I'm headed back over because we got different places. So it's a crazy time, and so yeah, that's just how it's been. Life has been weird. This last week has been weird. This whole week is weird. Like, my last week was weird because I had a baby, and which was early, by the way, emergency induction, so we weren't expecting that. We thought it would be this weekend. So, like, just that week difference of being, like, unprepared and having all this junk and just utter madness. And then election week has been, like, the craziest thing ever. So, wild times. But the first episode of The Mandalorian was one of the best shows that I could, like, for it to be the first show I watched. Like, this is my first dad episode of anything ever. The Mandalorian season 2 premiere, and it was fan-freaking-tastic. First off, I have to note, U.S. Deputy Marshal Raylan Givens. I love Timothy Oliphant because I love the show Justified. Like, he was in that. He's been in a bunch of things. I found out from other reviews for this episode that he was the sheriff in even more things than I thought he was in. Because I was like, okay, Justified, that was what I knew him from. He was in that movie, The Crazies That You Never Saw. He was actually a sheriff in that as well, or like a marshal or something like that. He may have just been a cop. Maybe that's what it was. So he was in those. Live Free or Die Hard, he was a terrorist. I'm pretty sure he was the first Hitman, like the first, like there's the Hitman video game that has 2 movies, if you didn't know that. So the first one, I'm pretty sure that was Timothy Oliphant, because there's a scene, because he's totally bald in that, so he just looks super different, and he was skinny. And there's just this scene I always remember. He was like walking and swinging, and he threw something, and I just thought he just looks like a really big-headed like rag doll right now, because he was just bald, and it was like his head looked big, and he was just swinging. And I was like, he just looks like a big head on just a ragdoll body, and that just always stuck out to me. Don't remember anything else about that movie. He slept with a woman in that, and I was like, Agent 47 would never do that because he's Agent 47. But I digress. Video game movies are video game movies. Point is, he's a marshal in everything, so he shows up. We have, of course, the beginning of this season. It's like, all right, well, where are we going after the madness of the last season? Of course, that final scene of season 1 where they had the Darksaber, and that just, like, I was so excited. I was so excited. I, like, cried. It wasn't like, oh, my eyes watered up. Like, they watered up so much that I was like, that just counts as crying. So I was excited. I'm like, I don't know what we're going to get. They're talking about, Ahsoka's coming in, and possibly, some Rebels stuff happening with Sabine possibly coming in, and then some Jedi fights, and, lightsabers versus Darksabers. And I was just like, I don't know what this season's going to be, but I'm excited. So, of course, we get episode 1. The Mandalorian himself, he's going through, it's like, hey, I need to find some more Mandalorians. Sends us back to Tatooine. Didn't see that one coming. Right off the top, they're like, all right, cool little fight scene. I like that it was hand-to-hand combat. I thought that was pretty cool because it was like, he's in this close quarters fight. He uses his little whistling birds, so we probably won't see those again the whole season unless something random happens and he, like, stocks up because that's supposed to be super hard to come by. So use those up in the beginning. It's like, hey, these cool things that gets them out of a tight spot, and they're gone. So we probably won't see those again for the rest of the season until, like, maybe halfway through if something insane happens, or possibly like the end of this season. But uses those, gets into a cool hand-to-hand fight. I love the fact that during that fight, like, we see him dodging and stuff, and then there's one point I'm pretty sure he literally leaned right into a punch, because I'm like at some point it's just like, well, of course it makes sense. Like, he's wearing an armor that he can get shot in the face, or, in certain body parts, and nothing happens. Obviously, a punch isn't going to do anything. If someone has, like, Hulk strength and they punch them in the head, yeah, it wouldn't break the actual helmet, but it would mess his head up, because his head would, like, hit the helmet, and it would mess him up. But just people of average strength is like, I'll just lean into this, and he just, like, leans into a punch, and someone just hits their hand on it, and it's like, yeah, what do you think was going to happen? So, of course, he beats everybody up. He gets the info from the guy who apparently was played by John Leguizamo. Didn't realize that. Didn't notice his voice at all. And so, of course, he ties him upside down. And I knew this was going to happen. I thought he was going to shoot him. But he was like, promise you won't kill me. He was like, I promise you won't die by my hand. I'm like, nobody ever, ever says that specifically. Nobody ever says, I promise you won't die like this unless you're about to die. Because I just assumed, like I said, he was like, I promise you won't die by my hand. Boom, blaster ball. I just knocked my phone over. Boom, blaster bolt, and he's dead. But instead, he's talking, he's like, hey, cut me down. And he was like, that's not a part of the deal. And he just turned around slow, blew out the light, and then just strolled away. And like, that was the opening scene. I was like, that was super cool. So I love the opening. And then, of course, we have him go to Tatooine. He runs into the woman from the last season. They, have their little moment. And then, of course, he goes off to this random town we've never heard of before, which seems to be oddly bustling. Like, there's a decent amount of people there for it to be way out in the middle of nowhere. I was like, how are they actually surviving? And it's literally about as old school Wild West as it gets. Because I'm like, this is a town seemingly in the middle of nowhere. They have like the moisture farm stuff going. They had, they had the pillars and stuff. That's what that was for. They have their banthas and things like that. So he strolls on in as the Mandalorian. It's like, whoa, holy crap, he's a Mandalorian. It was, that's the whole point of the show. It's the Wild West show. But this was definitely classic stare down. The stranger strolling into town. It's like, whoa, look at this dude. He's dangerous. He's a Mandalorian. And they know that because obviously, their marshal has Mandalorian armor. And that's like the whole thing. So it's like, oh, snap, like an actual Mandalorian strolling in. Walks into the bar. Sheriff comes in. And it's like, all right, they have a conversation. Boom, this dude comes in. Before they even have the conversation, it's like, first off, super skinny. I was like, all right, this isn't going to be Boba Fett. But that's Boba Fett's armor. Instantly explained the scene from the last season when the random dude was dead on the ground and they had the spurs. And then everybody was like, oh, well, that's Boba Fett because Boba Fett has this. So you could just say, like, he had his armor, and that's why they did that. They put the effect in because someone else was wearing the armor. So I was like, makes perfect sense. He had the armor. Get the little flashback, the explanation, everything. They were, of course, going to have a shootout, which was super cool. But, obviously, Crate Dragon comes in, get the whole explanation for the whole town. This is what happened. Death Star blows up. Everybody's happy. Instantaneously, new douchebags show up. We're taking over the town. Kill everybody in the whole freaking place, except for the bartender and the now sheriff. He ends up escaping with, the little ice cream thing that they made into a canon item now. And he ends up having, like, this insane, cache of crystals. He meets some Jawas, they pick him up, and it's like he noticed that there's Mandalorian armor, which I would assume means that Boba Fett escaped on his own. If they go the canon route, that's exactly what happened. Like, he escaped on his own. They showed that there was like a bullet or blaster, I can't say hole, blaster dent in the head. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. We might get an explanation for it and stuff like that. But he picks it up. It's like, all right, new sheriff in town, Mandalorian armor. Takes everybody down, and I thought it was cool. I was like, all right, this is pretty interesting. Loving the episode so far. There were a couple things I didn't like 100%. There were just some random parts where I thought the acting was just like oddly stiff. Just like, and it was really like in the first half. It was just like some minute things here and there were just like oddly stiff, and I just didn't like it. And I could tell, and obviously because I knew it was CG, but the speeder bike stuff, in the beginning at least, it just didn't look 100%. Maybe it's just something about like watching on my TV and like the frame rate of it all, like being in the actual 4K, it makes it easier to see like, okay, like obviously it's like on green screen or, with whatever the tech is that they use with the background screen. So I was like, okay, that was like the one, like the most minute little thing. It was just like slight moments. I was like, that just felt like a weird read, or like the way it was delivered just felt odd to me. And then all that went away in the second half. It was literally like just some parts in the beginning just felt a little stiff and just a little odd. And then, like I said, the little CG thing, that's impossible not to notice, though, because it's literally CG. And they do so much practical stuff that I think that's why it stood out to me so much, because, like, they were just, like, everything's effing practical. And then it's like, okay, him on the speeder bike the whole time is so CG compared to everything else. Even though it's great CG, it's, like, super CG compared to everything else they had. Because if he was in space, it's like, okay, it's just black background. It makes it easier because everything's CG there. But for some reason, when it was like, okay, real sand and real people and just the way it looked, I was like, something about it just looked like slightly 3D, where I was like, he just looks like he's on a different plane. And that was, like I said, that's like a slight nitpick because, like, obviously it's CG. So, there's that. It just caught my attention. But love the episode. The Krayt Dragon comes in. Tusken Raiders come in. We learn a little bit more about the Mandalorian because he mentioned in the last season, he was like, I speak a little bit. And then in this, he's having full-on conversations and stuff. And he's a translator. And then I'm just like, that's more than just like, I speak a little bit. Like, he knows stuff. Like, he was talking to the dogs and everything, and they walked right up to him and he pet him because he knew the language. And I was like, wow, what does he know? Like, how much time has he spent with Tusken Raiders, and why did he? Why was he there? So that may never get explained. It might just be one of those things he knows. But I thought that was super cool because I love the way that they handled that. And of course, it's the town. It's like I said, once again, old school Western. It's the Native Americans or like the people out in the desert and stuff. It's like, oh, these savages out there, and then the townspeople. Like, it was that. It was definitely that allegory. But they did a great job with it. I thought it was fantastic. We get to see more of the Tusken Raiders, which I never thought I would care about. But I was like, huh, this show makes the Tusken Raiders entertaining. We see him use the little pick thing to pick the Bantha's tooth, and I was like, huh, that's canon now. Never would have thought of that. But it's interesting. Little stuff like that. Crate Dragon was super cool. You know, it strolls into town. I was like, what is this, like Tremors? Tremors and Dune, of course, were the two things I thought. Then it ate a Bantha. And I couldn't be the only person that thought this. I was like, that Bantha was fodder. And I was like, you could not say that. Like, you have to think that in your head. So they, of course, have their truce. They go. The first dude dies. I love that, where they were going to make, like, the sacrifice, and he's running. And then the Great Dragon eats him and then goes underground, and the Bantha's just there. And I was like, that sucks for that guy, but that's super funny. And eventually they go through. The townsfolk are like, all right, we'll work with him, and everything's cool. They had one random line I'd like to point out. They talked about, when he was giving his spiel, it's like, you know, we have to work with them, and, you know, they will, you know, we're going to have a truce. They won't attack us. We won't attack them. But if we don't do this, the Great Dragon will eventually destroy everything. And especially, you know, like, we don't want that to happen, especially not the school. And everyone's like, ooh, the school in this town where we've seen, like, 0 kids. I don't think they showed a single kid, even when he was strolling in town. I was like, that was oddly weird. It was like, especially the school. And I was like, there's no kids here. I didn't see a single kid in this whole thing. I could have missed it easily. But, and I guess it makes sense that they wouldn't be at, like, the town meeting. But I thought that was so weird. Like, we saw him stroll through the town that was, like, a mile long. And I was just like, that was weird. It was just like, not the school. Think of the kids. And I'm like, where are these magic kids that they care so much about? But I thought that was interesting. Where it was like, especially the kids. Or especially the school. They team up, a couple of people die. The Great Dragon was freaking amazing. It was huge. And then also, first off, it's a giant dragon. And then it was like, okay, they're getting an attack in. They made it angry. And then it pops up and it's like, surprise, I spit acid. I can just, you know, spit out my stomach fluids. And it's just melting people. I was like, wow, I didn't see that coming. So then it burrows underneath and then it bursts out the top of the mountain. And I'm not going to lie, I was like, okay, I know they call it a Great Dragon. That doesn't mean that much. And they had like the little skeleton thing, and it was like, well, that's not to scale, which I thought was a great scene. It was like, it's to scale. I was like, if this thing bursts out of the mountain or something, and it has like legit wings, and it like crawls around, I'd be totally fine with it. I would love that. But it's still just, you know, a giant snake. They just call it the dragon. But it was amazing. It was a great sequence, and unfortunately, a buttload of people ended up dying. And we have, you know, the first explosion fails. And then, of course, the Mandalorian does something ridiculous. He should not have lived. He should not have lived. But it was the coolest thing ever. I was like, all right, look after the kid. Boom, he hits the jetpack, sends him flying into the air. And he gets eaten with the Bantha. Once again, the Bantha was fodder. And so they're inside. The Bantha is strapped with, like, the second set of bombs. And then he flies out of this thing because he used the prod on the end of his rifle. And he, like, electrifies this thing from the inside out. And it spits him out. And so he flies out, and then he sets off the bomb and blows this whole thing to pieces. And I was like, that is so freaking sweet. Like, I absolutely loved it. So I couldn't believe. I was like, he shouldn't have lived. I knew he was going to. I was like, he got eaten. It's going to be like, boom. And there it is. You know, new character. And we knew that wasn't going to happen. But it was just like, wow. That was ridiculous and amazing. And he flew out of the thing with lightning trailing behind him. And then he blew that thing up. And it's like, everyone's like, yeah. And then they had, like, the pearl and stuff like that. And everybody took giant chunks of meat. And I was like, that's freaking sweet. And it was a great episode. And he actually got the Mandalorian armor from the guy. Like, they actually, you know, had their deal. And it's like, you know, I hope we meet again. It's like, likewise, which would be super cool because I love Timothy Oliphant. But it was great. It was a fantastic episode. I absolutely loved it. And it was like, this is just cool. And then we got, like, a cool backstory. Like, you know, they did the whole Western backstory and everything. It was like, yeah, they strolled into town and killed all the people. And I escaped and I barely survived. And then the Jawas found me. Like, he had his own backstory in the beginning of the episode. He also had a pod racer. His bike was a pod racer. A lot of people mentioned that the scene where the Mandalorian like hits the jetpack and sends him flying, that was actually a reference to Return of the Jedi when Boba like dies and you know he gets hit by Han Solo and it's like Boba where, and he hits him. That was a reference to that, and it, you know, just randomly sends him flying. They had graffiti on that first planet where you got to see C-3PO, I want to say Chewie, and then I think someone else, and I can't remember exactly who it was, but like they had the graffiti and it was like, oh, you know, these specific characters. So there were a lot of references thrown in, but I thought they were done well. Like a lot of people mentioned like there were good references in this, and like the Krayt Dragon itself, I didn't really know what the Krayt Dragon was, but apparently in the first Star Wars movie, when 3PO and R2 are going through the desert, that giant skeleton in the background is a dead Krayt Dragon. And I was like, cool. You know, there's a ton of stuff I don't know about the Star Wars universe, so I was like, neat. I like references, even if I have to watch other reviews to find out that they're references. They're great. So, love the first episode. I was already excited for the second one. Like I said, I saw the second one, so I'm going to do that review next. But we'll love to know your thoughts on this first episode. All these reviews are probably going to be insanely late, at least a week late, or maybe every other week it'll be on time. Maybe that's just how I'll end up doing it, like 2 at a time. But I would love to know your thoughts on the season premiere, what you guys are looking forward to for this season, hopes, dreams, all that good stuff. All I need, I mean, they got the main villain already, so I know he's coming back. All I need is more Darksaber. They need to pump it out. I recently, not recently, it was like weeks ago, I was walking through Walmart, and I stopped because I was looking for something else nerdy, of course, and I came across the Darksaber. I didn't know they made this yet. So they already made the toy Darksaber that you can buy like in the toy aisle, where it's like, oh, you hit the button and it lights up, and it's the plastic version. And I think I said this in my season finale review for the first season. I was like, if they make it real life, like, it's one thing when it's on Clone Wars or it's in Rebels and stuff like that. When they make something the live action version, instantaneously it ups the value as far as a figure, and that means they're gonna make it a toy. And I knew they were gonna do it, so they've already made like the cheapy, toys. I can't even say Toys R Us anymore, but the cheap Walmart version, which means I cannot freaking wait. So they need to put that junk in as much as they possibly can, which unfortunately, because it's so spectacular, they're gonna have to save it. But I'm just waiting. Like, I need a couple more moments with that Darksaber, so they're like, you know what, it's time to do like a special FX version of the Darksaber. I will buy that in a heartbeat, because I need that. If they make it, I don't know how they'll do it, because it's actually meant to be thin, like an actual like katana style, like a normal blade. So I don't know how that's gonna work, but I'm excited for it. Like, they already made the toy version. I need the serious version, so I'm looking forward to that. I know that has nothing to actually do with the series outside of the fact that it's gonna be in there. When is it Moff Gideon? Yeah, when Moff Gideon shows up again. But yeah, I just want to talk about that because I'm super excited. When I came across that, like, I stopped in my tracks. I was like, they actually made the toy, which means like I'm one step away now. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for the whole season. Who knows with the Ahsoka stuff, Rebels, other Jedi. I don't know if they're gonna have anyone outside of Ahsoka, but either way, I'm looking forward to this whole season. Like I said, we'd love to know what your thoughts are and hopes and dreams and all that good stuff for season 2. And I definitely want to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.